GM, GM. So, daily levels. Today is Thursday, the 8th of Feb. And I was talking about this yesterday, well, really all week and all of last week. If you go back and watch, just very simple. We sold off from 49 to 39. We consolidated, had an impulse move higher, and then a 1 week or 9 day sideways compressing compressing consolidation with volatility declining, volumes decreasing, choppy, choppy, choppy. The first direction you should expect that to break is in the direction of the preceding trend. So the preceding impulse was higher. So remember, if you go to the trading lessons, you'll see this. The nature of a trend is impulse, correction, impulse, right? And regardless of what way that correction looks, it can look in many different ways. It can be a compression, it can be a bull flag, it can be upward sloping. It can be a bunch of different ways. It doesn't mean, first of all, absolutely it's not 100% accurate. And also, what a lot of people miss is you have to have had an impulse. This was the key part. The fact that we pushed into a consolidation and impulsed higher, which means you break away with high volume and leaving gaps behind into a consolidation higher. Oftentimes, you'll see, especially in this phase of the market, like where it was clearly going down, right? It went down all the way to 39. If it had just sort of went like this and was more corrective in its grind up, that wouldn't be considered an impulse. So if you then saw a compression, it wouldn't necessarily break to the upside, or at least if it did, you wouldn't have as much confidence it might reverse, or it could even break to the downside. The impulse is all important. The impulsive price action now is quite clearly to the upside from here and last night's breakout going into this morning. That doesn't mean we're going to the moon necessarily, but the trend is up. And I also think one of the main things I'm looking at here is I want you all to really closely watch Bitcoin dominance, because in my mind, Bitcoin is the only game in town at the moment. This isn't strictly accurate. Obviously, some altcoins will always do well, but what I've noticed more from looking online and from seeing positioning as well is that as soon as Bitcoin starts to move, people are going piling into altcoins. And it's not just that. People are carrying heavy altcoin bags, right? You remember that when Bitcoin went sideways here for a month, everybody got long alts. Then we all pushed up, then we had the sell off, then it got washed out. Well, people are buying the dip, and instead of buying Bitcoin, they're buying alts. I think that's a mistake broadly. Nothing wrong with buying some alts. Alts always do that. But I don't think we're just going to go alt season, alt season, alt season. I think it's either going to be Bitcoin strength and Bitcoin dominance increasing, which we're seeing a bit of. We're seeing Bitcoin dominance start to climb slowly higher. Or we're actually going to see a sell off, because the market's going to get itself too excited up into big resistance. Then we're going to sell off, revisit the lows. And at that point, alts will get crushed. Some of them will go to new lows. But that's not happening yet. For now, we're going up. So we'll just expect continuation until something proves otherwise. But here's not the place to be adding, massive amounts of risk. If you look at the changes now of open interest and funding across the market, I talked about this yesterday or the other day. I said, if and when we break out, you're going to see everybody get long, going up into the highs. And sure enough, we can see now, if we go and look at Bitcoin open interest, altcoin open interest, Bitcoin funding, altcoin funding. Bitcoin's funding is still below neutral. Altcoin funding is just ticking back towards neutral. So for now, everything's okay, not too bad, relatively healthy. Bit of a rate of change, but the alts had gotten really negative, so that rate of change is right, quite normal. Bitcoin has had a couple of spikes above neutral funding, but broadly it's sitting at neutral, like 0.0098. That's basically neutral. Altcoin open interest has just been climbing, climbing, climbing. Again, nothing overly concerning about that. It's not like it's ramping up super hard. Bitcoin's open interest has ramped up. Obviously, there'll be some longs in there, but I do think shorts, obviously, given the way that we're moving, shorts are offside currently. And so, no reason to start, fading this yet or expecting massive nukes or anything like that, even though we can have a sell off. Right? This is not a trend on the higher time frames. So we trended down on the low time frames. This is a 6 hour chart. We trended down, 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 down. We've reversed. We're now trending up, up, up. But the whole context, 39 to 49, this is all just a range. Yeah. You can't say this is like a new leg, new bull market leg, new up only trend, because we're pushing up into massive ETF launch day resistance. So totally normal to expect that if we do push higher, that there's going to be some kind of pullback. So you don't need to be getting too crazy on alts just yet. And so I think a lot of people are probably going to get ahead of themselves, because what I saw yesterday when Bitcoin's breaking out, everyone was talking about, getting long fucking Say and Sui and Injective and all these altcoins, right? And all these new launches and Jupiter and Dimension, and everyone's just piling back into alts when I don't think it's alt season. It's not alt time. We had alt season for several weeks. I think alts are broadly going to go through more of still in a reaccumulation. Again, I've talked about this all the way. I said no reason to see why alts would go lower. This should act as support. It kept acting as support. We're still holding up. We're pushing nicely. But again, it doesn't mean that it's going to go like that, because for alts to go like that, I mean, as I look at not at the total funding, but if you just scroll down here and you see the predicted funding across a bunch of coins, they're all above neutral already. ETH, Solana, Space IDs in a short squeeze, that's different. Ordinals, 0.03, Link, 0.03, Sui, 0.12, 0.132, 0.06, 0.01, Celestia's below. The rest of them are above. They're pretty much all above neutral. There's a few that are negative that are just being shorted heavily, but on balance, most of the top alts are starting to attract higher funding rates already, which tells me that people are just longing their longs again with leverage. And again, that can sustain. High funding is not a bad thing. High funding can sustain for much longer than people think. But given that we already are seeing the signs of returning a high funding, open interest ramping up, and total 3 is here, how do you think it would look if total 3 goes to here, which is obviously resistance? Right? That was support below us. This is resistance above us. If we were still at neutral negative funding, which by the way we could be, if prices pull back a bit and funding goes neutral or negative again, or just the market cools off and price just goes like this, we could easily see a move up. But you have to keep an eye on that. And to me, I think if we pushed another 10% up or 8% up across the altcoin cap, I think people would be getting too long up into resistance, and we probably would see some kind of pullback or maybe a false breakout where it touches the highs, drops back, more reaccumulation, and then we go. That's still what I'm expecting. And also, we're about on the 20th of February, which is about 10 days from now, 12 days from now, we'll be exactly 2 months from the Bitcoin halving. I fully expect Bitcoin to steal the show again at that point. And if you have traded through bull and bear, you'll know that this year, if we do follow even something similar to the 4-year cycle, the halving year is Bitcoin's year. All coins do okay, right? All coins are generally rallying off the lows in that year. And I do think that total 3 this year makes its way up to 800 billion and above. I think this is the recovery year where it'll make its way up. But that is until the end of this year, right? That's not right now. This can easily chop around more. I think people can go into alts a little bit too soon. And you can see this. I think ETH BTC is probably going to take another hit soon, right? ETH BTC has rejected off its initial pump, tried to pump up again, got rejected again. And I still just see this all as being positive for Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin is going to be stronger, whether it's up or down. right? If we pull back to 40K, I expect Bitcoin dominance to spike. I expect ETH BTC to drop even more because I think alts and ETH and all will drop more than Bitcoin will. I just think that it's not really the time to be max risk in alts. The altcoin accumulation, reaccumulation will probably take a bit longer. If you're buying and holding like long-term alts, perfect. I mean, I've still got my AKT that I bought at 55 cents and that I bought at 240 on this dip, and AKT is looking great. Not saying that alts can't do well. 100%. Alts can definitely do well. However, 2024, Bitcoin should keep being the most dominant, and Bitcoin should keep rising ahead of everything else until its all-time high, and maybe even beyond. This is just how I'm playing it. You can play it however you want, but my base case for the last several months, and nothing has changed, is that Bitcoin is under owned, right? Even more so than like leverage, longing, funding rates. That's all kind of short term stuff. But I just think that when you look across the crypto participants, most of them don't own Bitcoin, and I think this is the wrong year to not own Bitcoin. I think this is the year when Bitcoin does a massive run and people don't own it. They own altcoins, they own shitcoins, and the shitcoins underperform. They'll still go up in dollar terms, but I don't think Bitcoin dominance is done yet on its run for the year. I think Bitcoin dominance could easily have another big leg up towards 60% or more. And if that happens this year, it'll be in line with how Bitcoin tends to move. And I think it would catch a lot of people out because most people, if you poll people and think about this yourself, like most people don't have the majority of their portfolio in Bitcoin, which is typically how the split should have been. And the reason they do that is because, I don't have enough money to get rich on Bitcoin. Bitcoin's only going to go up 2x or 3x. I want to make more money than that, so I have to buy alts. Sure, like the logic is fine, but it doesn't mean that you're going to be right, not in the short term. And, if Bitcoin's going to go to 100K, I think a lot of that move comes this year. Whether it breaks all time high or not, I think it's going to just be the strongest coin in the market for the rest of this year. And nothing has really changed my opinion on that yet. Another thing about this is the move we had in October, November, December was really strong, and it was money coming back in off the sidelines. So this is the stable coin cap for USDT, USDC, and DAI. So the three biggest stable coins. We're not even back yet at 2022 peak, which is good. It means there's still room for it to rise with money flowing back in, and that will bring alts up. That will bring Bitcoin up. However, what's going to make altcoins have their parabolic move is new money, right? If we want total, if people are saying the total market cap can go to 5 trillion, which would be 2 trillion above previous all-time high, it's going to go to 5 trillion or even 10, like some people say. That needs new money. Where is new money going to come from? New money is only going to come from improving liquidity conditions, which we have, right? The central banks and the governments across the world are broadly adding liquidity. Global liquidity hit a new all-time high this week. But also you need cutting interest rates from the Fed, which they haven't started yet, right? They haven't started that yet. And you need some form of QE or some form of, whether they drain the RRP all the way down and then the Treasury drains the TGA, which will add liquidity to the markets, and then the Fed engages into reducing QT and maybe even starting QE. None of that stuff's going to happen in the short term. So when I look at alts, I see that it's the same ball of money that's chasing alts that was chasing it 6 weeks ago. So I don't see huge upside in alts. I think it'll be choppier. The breakouts will probably be false. And I don't think we're going to have a big impulsive new leg on altcoins. Where new money does come in and can come in and is coming in is Bitcoin because of the ETFs. So Bitcoin can have new flows coming in with the ETF issuers. That's trillions of dollars in TradFi, of which billions of it will flow into Bitcoin. So right now, as we stand today, and probably for the next few months, the only new money I see coming in is going to be to Bitcoin. When will new money come into alts? It's actually when they're closer to all-time highs, right? Just like we saw in 2020 and 2021. Real new money, right? Whatever got us to here, all of this, That was money that was already in the system, right? Brought us up to all-time high. New money starts coming in then, and then all the way. New money is what pushes you higher. That's why alts will outperform later on. People will chase them. They'll chase beta. They'll chase the narratives of AI and layer ones and layer twos and all that kind of stuff. But to me, that won't come until we're near $1 trillion on the altcoin cap, which of course means there's loads of room for the money that's just in the system to flow back into alts. That can happen. But if we're looking at new money, I think it's going to come to Bitcoin first. Then it's going to flow into altcoins after. So that's why I'm more focused on Bitcoin, and I think Bitcoin does best. Again, it doesn't mean that in percentage terms, like if Bitcoin goes to 90K, that's 2x. You could get an altcoin to go 2x super easily. But as a whole, right, as a whole, I think Bitcoin hits all-time high before the total 3 does. Yeah? Because total 3 is currently 127% away from all-time high. So it has to go up 127%. Not picking out any individual alt, because you can't tell which alts are going to do best. Not perfectly. So if you need total 3 to go up 130% to make an all-time high, Bitcoin is only what? 50, 60, 60%, 70%? 60% will take Bitcoin to all-time high. I think that's going to happen first. And so that's where my focus is. As for altcoin trading, again, I think the base needs to be built a little bit more. And if we go back to total 3, finish with that. If we look at the Michael's EMA on the weekly, I think total 3 is looking good. You've got support below in this area. If we retest that, support below is a good place to buy. And really anywhere into this area here. And then for total 3, I could see this, right? And then it starts to march. That doesn't look like much. But if it did that, it would look totally normal. That would make complete sense to me. It would also include a deep sell-off, right? If it went to 545 and all the way back down to 450, people would get wrecked because they would get in too early. And timing-wise, that could be 22 weeks. That's 4 or 5 months. So again, that's just a random squiggle I've drawn on the chart. I was trying to visualize and show you that altcoins don't have to just ramp straight up and moon. While they can, while it is possible, and certainly if it happens, we'll be there for it, we'll be ready for it. I hold alts. I've got some AKT, I've got a little bit of Solana, and I've got some ETH locked up. But predominantly, my focus is BTC. So that's what I'm looking at. Back to BTC, as we're looking at it here, on the lower time frames. One last thing I wanted to show was this compression that we're in currently looks very much like what we had over here. Basically, price consolidated in a tight range for about a week, okay, back here in November, impulsed and broke to the upside, and that set us into a new range. We had a flush and a sell-off, but you'll notice where the price started to trade then was at a higher level, right? From trading down here, we broke up higher, we flushed down, but then we traded at higher level. Bitcoin could be doing something very similar over here, because that's exactly what we've done for the past about 8 or 9 days here. So it's the exact same formation in a bullish market in an uptrend, where it's compressing, breaks out, compressing, breaks out. So what I'm looking at now is this weekly close is important. Obviously, the weekly needs to close above 44K. We're still a long way away from that. 4 days is a long time. We've Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. If Bitcoin can hold up in this area, and even if it flushes back, but if it just starts to spend more time here, we'll be looking at this and saying, that's potentially it, bottoms in. Bitcoin's just going to chop and grind its way up and then break out eventually. Whether it breaks out or not this month, to me, is less certain. We definitely still have time. So if you go and look at the options, the closer you get to the end of the month, which is February 23rd, the closer you get to the end of the month, the more these options levels matter. So it's showing 44K strike price there. So 44K and 50K are like the two big call walls. So 50K, if we hit it, should act as massive resistance initially. 44K, now that we're above it, that's what you really want to keep your eyes on. If Bitcoin can stay above this level going towards the end of the month, then it should put us into a range of 44 to 50 for the end of the month. Whether that stays, again, that's February 23rd, which is not this Friday, but not next Friday, but the following Friday. So it's still 15 days left for that. So it's a long way to go, lots of time still to pass, and we'll see how price moves in that time. But overall, everything's looking good. And we'll see. We'll play it how it goes. Keep an eye on open interest funding rates and then any changes coming up. GM.